So the title of our program, obviously, is Why Vote? And it might be not evident why we need a program like this for the League of Women Voters. After all, we are the League of Women Voters. It's part of our identity. Most of the people in this room have a strong commitment to voting. But every voter, including those of us who are historically voters, needs a compelling reason to vote. All of us can flag in our sense of purpose related to civic engagement. And so one of the things we hope to accomplish today is that people will leave with a renewed commitment and inspiration to be civically engaged through voting. But it's also true that not everyone sees voting as something they routinely do. There are many reasons for this. There are many reasons. These are just a few. Disengagement from the political process, feelings of futility, lack of trusted information, someone wanting to find the perfect candidate, and having trouble overlooking areas where maybe someone isn't perfect. Many people report they don't know how who they elect will actually affect their personal lives, and that's something that I think our panel will really help us understand today. And we have a problem with information access because the news tends to focus on national issues, but we vote in local and state elections where that probably has more impact on our day-to-day life than any national election does. And so it's extremely important to identify and elect good people, people well suited to understanding the needs of our local community in order to put them in office. So just a real quick survey to show you how big this issue is. This is from 2020, the last presidential election. Fewer than 85% of eligible people are actually registered, and of those, less than 70% actually turned out. So you already have a smaller pool, and then 70% turned out to vote, and that's in the presidential election. That had a major impact on the outcome. So this is the final vote tally. You can see the two party candidates, but 2,400,000 people didn't vote. The difference is the difference between the candidates is a little over 700,000, but 2 million didn't vote. Obviously, the outcome could have been changed. In Washington County in 2022, the last midterms, we had, every month, every week, the number of registered voters changes. So we had between 83 and 88,000 people registered. Turnout in the August election was a little under 13%, and turnout in the November 22 election was about 40%. And you can see the things that people were voting on: county commission, school board, the governor's primary, the local judges. And then in November, the governor, some constitutional amendments, the Johnson City Commission, Johnson City School Board. So people had important offices to vote on. And this is just a little preview of the races that we'll have on the ballot in 2024. Some of them are in August, and some of them will be in November. And next month, we'll be focusing on what's actually on the ballot. So if you're interested in learning more about what we have to vote on, come next month too. So, just to summarize, we are having this program because we want people to consider their reasons for voting. We want people to renew their commitment to voting. And we want people to be prepared to outreach to others to get more people ready to vote and capable of voting. So I want to introduce our panel. We're very grateful for all of you being here. So starting here. Mark Stevens is the Director of Communications, Special Projects, and Workforce Innovation and Opportunity at the First Tennessee Development District, where he's worked since 2015. If you don't know, First Tennessee Development District is an organization established by the legislature that carries out general and comprehensive planning and development activities for our local governments. And in this capacity, Mark works with the mayors of 8 counties and 20 municipalities in this region. He's the liaison between the district and several community organizations. He's responsible for monitoring legislation that affects our district. He provides guidance on workforce innovation. He oversees communication and staffs the foundation, which supports district programs on aging, housing, and workforce initiatives. Next to him is Victoria Hewitt. Victoria is the Executive Director of the Appalachian Opportunity Fund, a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to build community wealth by nurturing individual families in Central Appalachia. She spent most of her adult life involved in community organizing, fundraising, grant writing, and advocacy for Northeast Tennessee. She was born in Elizabethton, attended Northeast State before transferring to Yale and getting a degree in ethics, politics, and economics. And she lives in Johnson City with her husband and children. Next to her is Corey Whitfield. He's the operation manager of the Strong Families Northeast Tennessee. He manages a $25 million grant to uplift families from poverty and develop self-sufficiency. The Strong Accountable Care organization strives to improve the health and well-being of all in the Appalachian Highlands. It promotes and provides grassroots coordination of efforts of organizations from every sector of our community across 21 counties of Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia, so the entire region here. These include community and faith-based organizations, educational institutions, healthcare, and regional and local business. He serves on the Johnson City Chamber of Commerce Workforce Development Council and attended ETSU, where he received numerous awards. And he's been active in legislative advocacy in the capacity with many different organizations. And finally, but certainly not least, we're pleased to have Cooper Reeves with us. Cooper currently serves as the Director of Marketing and Communications at Johnson City Chamber of Commerce. He oversees all aspects of the Chamber's government relations initiatives, in addition to marketing and relocation initiatives. He has a bachelor's degree in advertising and public relations from ETSU, where he graduated summa cum laude. And beyond these professional endeavors, he's a member of the Johnson City Historic Zoning Commission and the Blue Plum Organizing Board, where he's vice president and co-director of the annual summer festival and the Johnson City Christmas Parade. So I hope you see we have people who have really special familiarity with what's going on in our region, with advocacy and awareness of community needs, and with working with elected officials to try to make sure our community has the services and needs and programs that it needs. So with that, we'll just start with just an opening question. And I will say, when we hope specifically to give people a reason to vote, but we see voting as sort of an outcome of civic engagement. And so we'll vacillate between sort of general thinking about civic engagement and specifically voting. And panelists, feel free to go back and forth or talk about both of those things. Okay? Okay. So just to get us started, I was wondering, is the other mic working?
No, not so well.
I'm just gonna hand the lapel mic, y'all can pass it back and forth, and I'll pose prompts to you guys. So I'd like you to start with maybe a story or an anecdote or an experience you've had sometime when you have seen the power of civic engagement for voting made clear. So, and you can start, we expect this to be comfortable and back and forth. It's not gonna be a real formal panel where everybody gets a certain set time. We hope everyone will speak freely and it'll be a rich exchange. So an anecdote or experience. So whoever wants to start, we'll start.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Corey Whitfield. So the power of civic engagement became very clear to me during my youth. I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina, and my mother used to always take me to the polls with her when she would go vote. And my mother used to tell me, she would say, look, people are going to tell you that your ancestors died for the right to vote. And that is partly true. They did die for the right for me to vote. However, the part that she always told me, she said, not only did they die for the right for you to vote, but they also died for the end result that they thought that the vote was going to produce. So the vote is only as good as the power that we put behind it. So she always told me, be an informed voter, be an empowered voter, and always put policy over politics, well, not politics, but over party and personality. It's always about the policy and always about the means to the end.
I mean, a couple of things come to mind. I've seen the power of civic engagement just move the narrative, really put pressure on institutions when they're not doing what we need them to do to take care of our communities. I mean, I've seen that time and time and time again. I'm gonna give one example that I've seen in our region of a win. I like to call it a win of people coming together. This was several years ago, ETSU, there was a few groups that started organizing so that adjunct professors would be paid better. And they won that. They got a small raise for adjunct professors after, I don't know how long they organized, but that's just one example where you see it's not always a clear win like that. Sometimes it's pressure, it's moving the conversation, but that is one example where, hey, look at it, they got together and got something done, so.
The example that immediately pops to mind for me is really more about the result of the voting and the elections that we have in this region. Who here remembers Dan Eldridge, the county mayor for Washington County? Okay, I figured some of you would know that name. When Mayor Eldridge was in office, he showed up at the district one day and wanted to have a very complicated and in-depth conversation about substance use disorder in our region. And the reason why is they had just had a Japanese company come visit here in Johnson City, and we're talking about investing several tens of millions of dollars in a facility that would have occupied the industrial park towards Grandview Elementary. And when it got to the conversation about workforce development, you know, Mayor Eldridge, being proud from Washington County, started talking about our strengths and that we can draw on a regional workforce, and we could beat any competitor that this company might be looking at. And they stopped him in the middle of his sentence and said, none of that's accurate. We've done our research on you. We know what your problems are. We know what your challenges are. And it kind of shocked him. And I don't know how well any of you know Dan Eldridge, but for him to be at a loss of words is kind of surprising. And so he, pondered on that, and then he came to the district. And at the time, we were led by a woman named Susan Reed, and he's like, Susan, we need to start talking about substance use disorder. We need to start talking about the impact of addiction in our region. And no one else wanted to do that in Tennessee. No one else wanted to do that in Southwest Virginia or Western North Carolina. And Dan Eldridge's personality and his reputation and his vision is how I would describe it, forced our board of directors, which is composed of the 8 county and 20 city mayors here in Northeast Tennessee, to have that conversation. And it's a tough conversation to have, and it was especially so 8 years ago when we started that. And the result has been things like what Corey's working on. Strong Families, Northeast Tennessee, a $25 million investment. The result has been Career Quest, which connects students to employment opportunities in the region. It's been Caring Workplaces, which is designed to take people from recovery or justice involved and put them back to work. And that is the sum result of one mayor talking to his 7 counterparts and then convincing about 20 other mayors to put the district in a position that it had never been in, that we were not designed at the time, that even the states were not even designed to be in. And now we're a leader in that, in our field. So or organizations like us, I guess I should say. We obviously have other more equipped organizations here to deal with the issue head on, but that's the result of Washington County voters sending Dan Eldridge back to office and his vision. And that's doesn't seem like a big deal, but had he not been there, we wouldn't have had that conversation. We'd be in a far different place than we are right now. So it does emphasize why those votes matter.
I love that we talk about, when we ask this question, it's an example of civic engagement or voting, because they're different, right? Voting is your civic duty and is certainly something we all need to do, but civic engagement is a little bit different. Civic engagement extends past the voting booth. It extends outside your polling place. So you go and you vote, and kind of like Corey said, the end result of that is important. And then what's also important is what you do past that vote. So it's being civically engaged in your community. And one example I see time and time again with a lot of folks, but including myself, is as our city commission appoints people to local city boards and commissions. So when I was 18, I applied and was put on the Johnson City Historic Zoning Commission as an 18-year-old, and nobody told me it was a 5-year term. Right. But so getting to see that our city commission believes in our citizens and believes in people getting involved in their communities and making a difference is important. And I see it, twice a year when they appoint people, people are wanting to get civically engaged, and when they are put on those boards, it leads to important things. It leads to the Parks and Rec Committee unveiling their master plan for our park systems for the next 5 years. It leads to the citizens on the Johnson State Development Authority having say in what happens with the John Sevier Center operations. These are important decisions that we all read about, we all hear about, but they're being made by local citizens who are being civically engaged in their community. So voting is important. It's important about who we put on our city commission, our school boards, and our state legislature. But it's also important about what we, as residents of Johnson City and Washington County, do ourselves.
Great, thank you. I'll just talk to you guys. No? Okay. So, in terms of the work you do in your position, how do you work with elected officials, or how does what they do affect you in your position? Do you make certain kinds of asks of elected officials? Do you have ways that you see how the power and influence of individual citizens has an impact on elected officials? And, just sort of talk about how what you do leads to your interaction with elected officials and your thoughts about that.
So my role as the person who manages the Chamber's government relations, everything we tell our local folks and our state legislators and some of our federal folks, everything we tell them and we talk to them about is coming from a business owner or a member of the business community. We are not set up as a PAC or a lobbying firm, so we cannot, we can't do certain things, but we do tell them what we're hearing from other people. So one of the things that we make an ask of our legislators is that they focus on the business community, of course, right? That's what our organization does. But one of the things is also, one of our pillars is workforce development, kind of like what a lot of you all do in your roles. Workforce development is something the Chamber focuses on. So we ask our state legislators specifically, hey, look for things that we can do to grow our workforce and improve our workforce in Northeast Tennessee. And one of those things is they go and do it. We have a good relationship with our state folks. The governor just signed a bill, it was Representative Tim Hicks' bill, for high school students to increase the amount of work-based hours they can do in high school, which adds to our workforce and adds to the ability for them to work more in high school, and then lead them into working once they graduate. But that's an ask we gave our legislators after hearing from many business owners and folks in the industrial park. We need workers. So that was something we asked our state legislators, please find what we can do, and Representative Hicks said, okay, I'll find something. So that's an example of how the Chamber works with some of our legislators.
So for us as Strong Families Northeast Tennessee, I want to highlight House of Representatives member David Hawk and also Senator Bo Watson. They co-sponsored the Tennessee Opportunity Initiative that we're working on right now that secured a $25 million grant that we're working on within our region. We received a grant for a period of 3 years, and we are now working on the process of trying to secure a 1-year extension of no cost because we had some leftover funds. This particular initiative came about because there was a surplus of TANF dollars that was here in the state of Tennessee. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So TANF being Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. That is our current welfare system at the moment. And what we are able to do with our program is make these systemic changes within our region to show that there are more efficient ways that we can utilize the current TANF dollars that we are receiving. So right now we are showing tremendous data to our state legislators, and we're saying, hey, this thing really does work, and we really are empowering families within our region. We work with AOF in Victoria. She's doing a phenomenal job of helping our families refinance their private predatory loans at a lower interest rate so they can get those paid off. We're doing financial literacy, helping families increase their credit scores, doing things like teaching them financial literacy so they can get out of these cycles of poverty that they continuously find themselves in. So we ask for our legislators' continued support because we want for this program to be a mainstay even after this 3-year period is over. And we hope that with the success that we're showing in our data, that this would be a bipartisan support. So that's what we're pushing for.
Corey, and you brought up a couple of things that's relevant to what I was going to say. So one of the, and our AOF hasn't been in the position yet of actually lobbying or doing advocacy, but one issue that we do talk to our elected officials, but one issue that we do talk a lot about is predatory lending, right? So in Tennessee, the legal limit interest rate on loans is 460%. I mean, that's one of the highest rates in the whole country. Yeah, okay, so in the state of Tennessee, the legal limit, how high you can charge an interest rate on a loan is 460%. And the organization's 460. Yeah. Crazy. We actually saw when they had a legal loophole at 700%. That was not based in Tennessee, but this is a huge problem all over the country. So yeah, that's an issue that community organizations and voters could have an impact on just by having organizations like Strong ACC and our program. We're able to show our legislators, look at all this money you're throwing into just stopping these loans from putting people under. And most of the people getting loans at that interest rate are making between $20,000 and $50,000 a year. It is harming our communities. So, while we haven't really gotten to the point yet of doing active lobbying, all of what Corey's talking about, the data we're already showing in this program, the work that AOF is doing, that at some point, it's gonna be a conversation that we wanna have with our elected officials. And of course, voters can put people in place that wanna have that conversation and take that seriously, so.
So we are the Association of the County and City Governments in Northeast Tennessee, so we can't get rid of our elected officials. They know where we are, they know our phone numbers. They're not afraid to use those cell phone numbers either. And we actually rarely ask our folks for anything. It's usually the other way around. They come to us and ask us to get involved in something or work together or bring them together as a convener so that our 8 counties or our 20, the entire region basically can work together on an issue because they are more effective as a unit. The only time we really go to our elected officials and really ask for anything is, we have a state allocation every year and we're not allowed to lobby. We're actually specifically, and so are you, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't lobby, Corey, but we're allowed to advocate or educate. So we do that all the time. In fact, between the General Assembly going into session and the end of session, which cannot end soon enough, we or our partners or some mix thereof of the other development districts across the state are at Nashville all the time to make sure that our interests, which are your interests and really the interests of local government, are not threatened or remain, if they have to remain status quo, they remain status quo, or if things shift in our favor, then obviously that would be a benefit. But the way the districts are designed, there's really not much for us to ask for other than funding, which we can then magnify out in our communities. But the weird part about that is when an election takes place, and I presume most of you are from Washington County, I don't know that to be true, but when you all elect a new mayor, it really impacts the operations of the region. And I don't know that that's common knowledge. So obviously Washington County, Sullivan County are our two largest economies. They're really the engine of this region. When they change leadership, it's felt. And that's power that you all have in your hands. It's less impactful if Carter County gets a new mayor, or Johnson County, or even Greene County. These two counties that touch here, Washington, Sullivan, I mean, that's a noticeable thing. So when we went from Dan Eldridge to Joe Grandy, that was a shift for us, not a negative shift, it's just a shift, because politics is such a person to person or personal thing. It just happens. So when we were looking forward as what that impact could be, I mean, you really have to start asking yourself, are we doing a good job educating the current round of voters or any future voters about what that means when they do go to the polls? Because, I mean, we're seeing now locally the same thing we're seeing nationally. There isn't much middle ground. There is not a lot of opportunity for frank conversations about what's beneficial for us. It's less the case in local elections, but more and more you do see one extreme or the other. So we don't really have an ask of our elected officials, just that they, do their thing and ask us what they need from us. But it's an interesting, from the district, we're really from a different perspective than anyone else up here, or anyone really in the room. We are an extension of those governments, so it's hard for us to ask of ourselves something that they already provide, so.
Right, that's fine. So that leads naturally into maybe the next thing you can all reflect on or maybe comment on, and that is that voting on matters like school boards, city commissions, county commissions, has the most immediate impact on individuals in the community. But national issues and national trends tend to get a lot of the attention, and partisanship at a national level has filtered down to the local level as well. So do you have any thoughts about how people should think about voting in a way that prioritizes the best interest of the community?
This is maybe not the most popular answer, but I would say vote your wallet. I mean, what impacts you every day. Tennessee's an unusual situation because our government's pivoted from deficit spending. So we have to make really conservative fiscal decisions year after year, no matter what. It's why we struggle so much with COVID, because the feds turned on billions of dollars that we are not designed to spend. We've never done that. We've never had to do it, or we've never had the opportunity to do it, I guess. The other thing that I hear from every community in Northeast Tennessee, and this is a very topical thing, and I'm not gonna go any further than just to say this, we're all very proud of our education systems. And focusing on our educational systems, our school systems, our schools. So every community in Northeast Tennessee, it does not matter where you are, whether it's Hancock or Hawkins County or Greene or Johnson, every community is very proud of their schools. And the lack of attention given to who is on a school board from the average voter is really shocking to me about when you consider that those are two very disjointed views to have. Most people couldn't tell you who their school board member is. And those folks make decisions that impact everybody in this room, or your children, or your grandchildren. That's really surprising. And I don't know if you all ever see that in your work, but it doesn't matter if they're a top school like Johnson City School System in Greene County, or Greenville City School System is very high rated as well, or if they're one that's maybe struggling. There's a lot of disconnect between what people think of their schools and actually who they send to make decisions about policy around their schools. And I've never understood that, because everybody goes to school at some point, theoretically.
I really like one thing I heard from Corey at the beginning here, vote for policy. It's policy over partisanship, I think, is important when it comes to how we can come together as a community. Because yes, the local elections matter really so much more, I think. And so, yeah, I think that the partisan divides, and I've seen a lot of this in the work that I've done in advocacy. I think what we really need is more community organizing, more people, like I'm looking at Ed Wolf right now, who helped organize the Black-White Dialogue organization. We need more community groups that are paying attention, like everybody in this room, I'm sure, to what's going on in our community so that we can come up with a narrative and talk to each other, knock on doors, call your friends, call your family, and let's talk about what's going on in our community. I think, to me, things often come down to community organizations. If harm is happening to us, oops. Did this go? Okay, never mind. If harm is happening, or if there's an opportunity, and Johnson City's developing so much, we can come together. They just had an event the other day, the Horizon Planning. It would be wonderful if we saw the whole community coming out to this. I think this is going in and out. Going out to those planning meetings so we can really identify together, what's really going on around us. Because we're looking on our phones and we're looking on the TV all day and we're hearing about what's going on way beyond us. And so just community organization will go a long way in this.
So I have to agree with Victoria. I do believe that we have lost our sense of community. So you can go to a high school football game on Friday night and everybody's go Betsy go, everybody's go Hilltoppers go. But just as soon as you turn on your television and there's a commercial about a legislator on a national level, here comes the division, and we lose sight of community. To me, in my humble opinion, it doesn't really matter what your political ideology is. For example, me and Victoria could have very different political ideologies, but guess what? Our children go to the same schools. We travel the same highways. We work at the same corporations. At our current job at Strong Families, we did a survey across 10 counties. 79 individuals that responded reported that they do not have enough food to get them through the end of the week. We have to bring it back to community. And as long as we do not bring it back to the community, we'll always have these disparities and fall short, unfortunately.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, very, very politically minded, and they're talking about the national secretary on housing and urban development is resigning. And they're talking about what she's done, and they're talking about housing issues in the nation, and everybody, we all hear about it. And they're going on, and I said, so, they're from Johnson City, and I said, our city commission, five local citizens, I said, they are rezoning a property to get almost 800 new apartments put in. They, no idea. They said, oh really? I said, sure enough. So these down ballot races, they're important. They'll talk and they'll listen all about our national stage all day, but these local races, these down ballot races are really important because these are the things they do. These things, like Mark said, they affect everybody in this room, and they affect us sometimes more than we know. But Corey's right, that divide it's increasing everywhere, and it can be increasing here. So it's important that on these things, I hear all the time at my work, nobody cares if you're a city commissioner, believes in some national issue. They care if you're going to get their pothole fixed. That is something that people need to remember. It's not about this versus that. It's about who's going to get the job done. That's something we can rally around because people here know who gets the job. People know who can get the job done.
So you can just keep it over there. I'll direct this to you. So that sort of leads into thinking about people who feel like politics doesn't affect them, or who they vote for doesn't really matter. So some people think that, some people just feel disengaged or exhausted, some people feel powerless. and that it's just not worth the effort. So what would you say to those people? What are some of the messages you could give to those people who feel that way?
One thing I like to try to remember with me personally is you don't vote for politics. Politics affects everybody negatively. You vote for government, and government can affect you positively. Government can affect you negatively. So we try to push civic engagement and civic knowledge and voter awareness at the chamber, and that's one thing we try to push in messaging is you're not voting you're not voting for politics, you're voting for your government. You're voting for the people who are going to decide how your child receives their education. You're voting for who's going to decide if you should raise your property taxes by 2%. You're voting for people that that you hold accountable. They're accountable to you. So we certainly don't have the perfect fix. I, as a young person, certainly don't have the perfect fix with my age demographic being the least voting age demographic out of voters. So I wish I had the perfect fix for them. Yeah, I'll try. I'll try. But that's something we just try to push, and I tell people is you're voting for the things that matter to you.
So one of the key features of government is they help with the distribution and allocation of resources throughout our community. And so it's not just the effort of one entity or one group that does that. We as citizens have the ability to go in and interact with our government officials to help with facilitating that process and have influence on that. The moment that we remove ourselves from that process, we can no longer blame our government officials for how they distribute resources when we are not at the table to have these discussions. The moment that you eliminate yourself from those discussions, you have ultimately given them all of the power and the rights to allocate resources however they deem fit. So we have to always ensure that we are being engaged, or just don't complain about how they determine the right way to allocate resources. So it's very important we're engaged.
I think voting is kind of the least we can do with civic engagement, right? It's the one thing, a lot of people are working, they've got kids, they're busy, you can't get involved with everything, understandable, but voting is literally the least thing we can do to, act like we're part of the public, right? So I think, I say this, and I am one of those people who has struggled with feeling unrepresented by the entire national political arena, and I've struggled with feeling like my vote doesn't matter. I remember reading a study years ago from Stanford that said that they looked at bills that were passed in Congress, and they looked at polling data, and they said that the public had a near zero statistically insignificant effect on national public policy. All right, I'm not going to gaslight anybody in this room into thinking that there's not an issue here with our democracy. I think that there is, and I think everybody here, well, I don't know, y'all are about defending democracy, right? So it's an active thing that we always have to do. We have to keep doing it. It's a day in and day out job to keep the public together, but the vote is the one thing that all of us can do to be a part of the process. And without being a part of a process, we're not in a democracy. So.
Yeah, I would agree with Victoria. Voting is the equivalent of having a pulse. And this country requires advanced citizenship from everybody. I mean, that's why we've worked so well over the last 200 plus years. Anyone who doesn't think voting matters should hear the story of Patty Whitby. Does anyone know who that is? She is the county mayor of Carter County. 3 years ago, she was a county commissioner, and I don't even remember the job title. If Patty Whitby ever sees this, I apologize. She was like a clerk in one of the government offices. I don't remember her job title. I think she was in the part of the court system. They were at a roadblock in their county commission, of which she was a member. They could not elect a commission chair because the former commission chair resigned. And so they said, oh, we'll just pick Patty. Everybody likes her. Everybody likes Patty. She's a good egg. Again, sorry, Mayor Whitby, but I think that happened in July. The county mayor, guy named Rusty Barnett had a massive heart attack and passed away, unfortunately. It was a huge blow to that community. Do you know what happens when a county mayor dies in office? The commission chair becomes county mayor. Yeah. So Patty Woodby was acting commission chair for like a month and then becomes acting county mayor. Patty Woodby to date has secured over $60 million for her community since she's taken that role. Yeah, she's real good. You're right, Wynn. The people of Roan Mountain valued Patty Woodby and sent her to the county commission. She used the opportunity that arose from that vacancy to secure the votes of her county commission, who are also duly elected public officials, to secure the permanent appointment. She ran for re-election here, 18 months ago, and crushed that race. And in all that time, she's also secured significant grants of money from the state, or direct allocations from the state government. One includes a middle college, which I think is gonna total over 40 million. She just got 6 million extra for the Tweetsie Trail, which connects Johnson City and Elizabethton, so it can go up to Roan Mountain. That was people in Roan Mountain that believed in Patty Woodby. That's the people of Carter County that saw what what potential she had, but it was an absolute accident. She was just in the right place at the right time because the people that she knew best voted for her. It's usually the opposite, by the way. The people in politics, people that know you the best hate you the most. So it says something about Patty Woodby, but that demonstrates, I wouldn't call that a fluke. That's not divine intervention. That's the people voting for the right person, putting them in the right place at the right time.
So just to extend this topic a little bit, and to whatever extent you feel like you can answer this question, non-voters frequently say they feel uninformed. They feel like they don't have enough information to be an educated voter. They don't know who stands for what or what's actually happened. It takes effort. I think most people agree it is harder to find information about local coverage, local things going on. So do you have any suggestions for how members of our community can get reliable, accurate information about what's actually happening with our government, with our elected officials? And again, just to whatever extent, I know it's not your mission per se, but all of you are aware, deeply aware of things going on related to your sector and your mission. So how can we expand awareness that people need to make decisions?
We talked about this earlier, yeah. The first would be to put this thing down, and then look around. I really struggle with that because the district, obviously we handle public funds. Everything we do has to be handled in a very specific manner, and one of those includes public meetings. So if we're gonna do a massive project in a community that's multi-million-dollar and impact, a huge swath of that community, we have to have public meetings. Almost no one attends those. So you'll see dirt moving in your community, you'll see water lines being extended, you'll see a road going in, and people have no idea that it's happening. But part of it's because, and I mentioned, we've all said it, but voting is the equivalent of having a pulse. You have to get involved, you have to pay attention. I don't know how many projects we do that are perceived as negative by the community. In fact, I'd say almost none. Well, I can think of one, but some of that's on you. I mean, it's just a matter of digging in. And I will say this: we spend a lot of time in Nashville, and I spend a lot of time with our mayors locally. But our elected officials love to hear from their constituents, and that may sound really surprising, but it's lonely, and it's a whole different world in Nashville. So when you walk into Tim Hicks' office, or Rebecca Alexander's office, or Gary Hicks, and there's a lot of Hicks, or any of our folks in our delegation, they are so appreciative to see somebody from home, because we have a commonality that they lack with Middle Tennessee, which is really funny to say, because we're all one state, but there is that, they're very receptive to what you have to say. You just have to open your mouth and tell them that. And there's plenty of opportunity for it. Now, it's easiest when you know where they are in their Nashville while they're in session. 9 months out of the year, they're rattling around doing who knows what. But they have jobs, presumably. But it really is on the voter to do that. I don't know how much easier the district can make it to attend a public meeting. you all are gonna have a different perspective because you're really more private side than I am, but the information's there. It could be easier to ascertain through your phone, but I think a good chunk of it is staying off of social media, because nothing there's gonna be the whole story, nor is it gonna be accurate, but.
Well, I empathize a lot with folks who feel that way, because the information that we're getting, it seems like it's getting less and less accurate, or everything's so partisan, everything's got an agenda behind it. I mean, honestly,
Through media.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking about social media, the news, things like that. I mean, it's hard to find something that you can trust the source of. So I really empathize with that, and I think it's hard for me to say, you know, it's all on people to just figure that out, because I think there's two things here. One, I can give advice. If you don't feel like you're informed, you can get a sample ballot before you go in and vote. Look at the names that are on the sample ballot, and then look up some local news on what these people have done, have talked about, what their background is. And I will admit, sometimes it's even hard to get information then. I've tried to do that, and I'm like, I still don't really know a lot about this person, but you can get at least a little bit of information that way. You know, I think community leaders, so I'm kind of speaking to myself here, I think community leaders could do a better job of somehow getting information out to people. So I think like organized groups of people like everybody in this room could come up with kind of an agenda, or just giving some basic information, some nonpartisan information. This is great. This is a nonpartisan organization. Just look at the ballots and give some information to the community and get it out there. I think the more that leadership in our community can see that, you know, poor and working people and marginalized people are honestly pretty isolated from us in our circles. So how can we extend ourselves more and reach more people? I think some of it's got to be on us too.
Yeah, so I agree with Victoria's point. We do have to do a greater job. Those of us that are actually in the community doing this type of work, we have to make sure that we're letting everyone know what is going on. But to add to that, I actually had a conversation with my oldest son about this a couple of years ago, and he was asking me about city council meetings and all of that, and he said that he didn't really feel like it was relevant because he was going to go to school and become a pediatrician, and who needs government? And I said, son, don't be dumb with a smartphone. Like, you need to know that everything that you do as a pediatrician is going to be regulated. And son, if you want to know about city council meetings, one Google click will let you know that Johnson City City Council meets every first and third Tuesday every month. You can get Thursday, okay, yeah, sorry. And then you can get the agenda meetings and all of that good stuff, and you can read and research what's going on because it is important. So social media can give you a bad rap, but if you're just looking and trying to see what's going on, sometimes Google can be your best friend.
One question or one comment.
Yes.
You can pick up the cell phone and live stream the commission meeting. So you don't even have to get out of your couch.
They turn it on YouTube.
And all of our governments made huge investments in that during COVID.
Yeah.
So if you're a really big local government, or you can actually keep tabs on everything that they're doing fairly easily.
I was with a group of pediatricians in Nashville the other day, and let me tell you, government, they're not out of government, let me tell you. Ooh, yeah. So I will speak for the Gen Z generation that's never not been without one of these before. Yes, Google can be the worst thing in the world, and it can be your best friend. Listen, our election commission and the Tennessee Secretary of State's office, they are some of the most wanting to inform you people out there. Like Victoria said, you can get a sample ballot for each election to see who's going to be on the ballot when you walk in. You can see who's picking up papers to run each time. You can go right now on their website and see who's picked up papers to run for Congress and Johnson City School Board. So you can look at who's picking up for Johnson City City Commission. So these resources are out there, and I agree with Mark that sometimes it's up to us to get out there, and we actually have to walk out of our house and go find out these things. And then Victoria mentioned it earlier. There are a lot of opportunities, and Mark touched on it too, for you to give your thoughts to our legislators. I know we say it all the time, but they really do want to hear from you. Johnson City's had, I think, 3 of their community input sessions for the 2045 master plan. Parks and Rec is doing it for the Buffalo Mountain Project right now. These people want to hear from you. Go to Nashville, go see them. I was just in Nashville for the Chamber Day on the Hill. And I mean, there were chamber folks up there. There were people from Quillen. There were people from Gatton. There were Moms Demand Action groups. The Nashville folks, and certainly the local folks who you can find in the aisle downstairs at Food City, they are not shying away from hearing from you. So it's up to us to get out there and do it. And Mark's right about the city commission meetings and going to them. You can stream them. They are open. I know Georgita goes and she knows how to work that city website very well. You can find out what their agendas are. You can read their minutes from multiple committees too. There's no shortage of opportunity to be informed, but it's being correctly informed and finding the right information. That can be hard. So sometimes it's up to us to ask the people directly, and that is what we as voters and citizens are supposed to do. We're supposed to ask them directly, hold them accountable.
So as we wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you to feel free to mention anything that you think might surprise voters about what's going on in our region, especially from your perspective. Anything you think, I guess advice about how an organization like ours can help voters become engaged. So that's really 2 separate things. What do you think people might be surprised or lack information about that you could, especially if it would give them hope? And then, advice for us as an organization trying to encourage voting, encourage civic engagement, encourage actions that protect democracy and lead to having the best interest of our community front and center.
Yeah, I think a big one that I hear a lot of people say is, and this does fall back to to partisanship, but people, especially here in Johnson City and in Tennessee, people say, well, I don't vote because nobody from my party is ever on the ballot. And that partisanship and strongholds is a whole different conversation. That's something I luckily don't ever have to have in my real job. But something I think people will be surprised to know is that there are people from multiple parties who do run. The problem with some people, succeeding in making things not a stronghold is because people don't vote. And because they don't vote, people don't get attention. And because they don't get attention, the message that there are other ideas and there are other mindsets does not get promoted as much. So right now, I think there's been 2 Democratic petition pickups for the Johnson City School Board, 2 independent, 2 Republican, I believe. So the diversity of thought is out there, and it's coming back to that. You gotta go talk to them. You gotta just find out what they're about, and then you have to vote for it. But I hear that a lot, is that I don't vote because I don't feel like I'm represented. People are out there trying to represent you. Across all parties and across all platforms and across all offices, people are trying to promote you, but if you want them to serve you, you've got to go vote.
I'm gonna speak to your second question. I think what organizations can do to help get voters out. So I saw a study one time that said a voter needs 7 touches in order to go out and vote for a candidate. That means maybe they see something about it online, they have somebody call them, somebody comes to their door. Voters need, unless you're just already a really engaged citizen who regularly votes because you care about it, 7 times. So I think that one of the most powerful things that civic groups like this can do is just find ways to make those touches. So I love canvassing. I've worked on a couple of campaigns in the past where And probably a lot of people hate the idea of knocking on a random person's door and talking about politics, but I'm a weirdo. But I think that it may feel hard, but you get more comfortable as you do it, and that's a huge win. Or phone banking, text banking, different things that civic groups can do to, you know, if you had a slate of candidates you wanted to support, or you just want to tell people, hey, remember to get out there and vote. Here's a sample ballot. Here's what's coming up. Here's some information that's together. How can we get to our neighbors and just get in their face with the information? And so yeah, it's a hard job. We need more people doing it. But I think that's a good way to go. Anybody else?
Mine won't be up the thing. I've worked in the public sector my whole career. I worked for Congress before I moved back home to do the job that I have now. And the thing that I think that was
It cuts in, I think there's a short in this, so just do that.
I don't think I need it. The thing that I think that would surprise most voters, and may be surprising to you, that I've always seen, and now this is stripping away the cameras and the noise and 24-hour news cycle, but whether it was on Capitol Hill, or I did travel a lot in the West when I worked for the Congress, or, you know, whether you're talking about a senator or a governor in Idaho or Wyoming or California, or now if it's a city or a county mayor here in Northeast Tennessee, there isn't a lot of distance between political opponents. It's between the ones that want to serve their communities and the ones that just want to make trouble. That's what I've noticed, and that's the biggest shock to me, is that I've never really noticed a huge difference when the cameras are off and no one's paying attention between a Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative. I've noticed a huge difference between, and I spoke to this earlier about what's coming, between people that are very serious about serving their community and people that have absolutely no intention of doing you a good turn at all. That is the biggest difference I've ever seen. And that's true of Democrats and Republicans, because I've worked with all of them. But it's obviously less noticeable at a local level, but I think that's the most cognizant thing you should be aware of when you're going to cast a ballot for anyone. Are they really going to do what they said they're going to do? And is that in my best interest as a resident of Northeast Tennessee? And those are two pretty easy questions to answer, especially with somebody's track record. I mean, anybody that's running for office in our region is not new. They did not just fall out of the sky. They're certainly not perfect. So I mean, that falls to you as a voter to really ask those questions of yourself. What are their intentions, and where are they going with that? So, but left, right, center, Republican, Democrat, at the end of the day, we have a habit of electing people that just want to do something good for their community, and that's always really heartening.
I would just say that one of the things that you could do is you have a multitude of organizations within our region, social service organizations that provide services to our community, whether it be mental health, whether it be organizations like Second Harvest Food Bank. Get in touch with these organizations and see what they're going through and see what the challenges are that they face day to day. I'm a licensed social worker, so I can tell you there's a lot going on with our community, especially as it pertains to community mental health and addiction. I would tell you that if you think fentanyl was bad, it looks like a Capri Sun in comparison to the stuff that's coming in. Matter of fact, right now it looks like that in about 8 years, we'll be averaging about 700 plus deaths, opioid related deaths within our region, if we don't have some major changes. So this is the type of information that we should be gathering from our social services organizations, and then we can take it to our legislators and say, hey, this is what the people that are on the grounds that are doing this actual work are facing. How can we support them?
I want to thank everyone. I mean, this has been wonderful.
We're not quite through yet. I want to point out that on your table there are some handouts. And there's also a couple of posters if you notice them. One is some slogans related to why people should vote. There's enough for everybody to have one individually if you want. You guys have mentioned several of these. You won't see change until you vote for it. It's a civic responsibility to be part of a democracy. You have a say in how government prioritizes spending and how your tax dollars are spent. People who don't vote really forfeit the right to complain because they haven't engaged. So there are all kinds of reasons there. On the backside of that, there are, and sometimes people vote for specific issues, which several people have talked about. There are just a few, and that's how many I call a few. There are dozens and dozens more of issues you might care about related to making effective government. So what we want you to do before we, also on your table are two little handouts like this, graphics, related to things that government is involved in that maybe would help stimulate some of the things if you're interested in healthcare access or Medicaid or Medicare. If you're interested in sort of or childcare, whether it's for working parents and related to workforce development, or if it's childcare for early childhood needs, there are many, many ways that government can touch people's lives. So these are all just to give you ideas, stimulate. Certainly not asking people to select one. That's not what this is about. We don't want to say choose one. We want you to look at these and think, get your juices rolling about which of these would you care about, and put it into the context of your own life. And then there are on the table some little half pieces of paper that say, I vote because. And we'd like everyone to write that down. Write down why you will vote. You know, you may vote for many, many reasons, but we hope you will leave here with a renewed sense that you will be voting this time at least because of this. And there probably will be multiple reasons that motivate you to vote. And if any of you feel so inclined, we'd like to take your picture with your sign if you're open to that. So take a minute, you can talk to people at your table, you can think for yourself, you can fill out the sign, and please give us some feedback. I want to remind you that things that our panelists said are on the upcoming agenda. So in April, we will be talking about getting education out there about what is actually going to be on the ballot. So that's our next program. And in May, we're going to be talking about how do we get out the vote? How do we use that information about what's on the ballot to get people to understand the relationship between these races that are coming up and why they need to get out then and have their voice heard. So as we go along, I hope you'll finish this process. I want to thank you all for coming, and I'm going to turn it back over to Gwen.